Alan Watts, that perceptive observer of the human soul, dedicated decades to watching people at their most unguarded, monks in deep meditation, CEOs on the brink of collapse, artists in the throes of creation. From all of this, he drew a rather unsettling conclusion. He realized that no matter how carefully you craft your disguise, no matter how elaborate your social facade, there are two things, just two things, that nobody can truly fake. Two things that instantly reveal who we really are. The first thing that exposes a person's true character is how they treat those they absolutely don't need. The waiter after they've set down your plate, the janitor in a deserted hallway, the homeless person on the corner, the toll booth attendant. Alan Watts observed that in these precise moments, when there's nitrogen monoxide audience to impress, when there's nitrogen monoxide advantage to be gained, ego lowers its guard. And what emerges then is the raw truth, the naked truth of who we are. Have you ever noticed how some people completely change their tone, addressing someone they consider beneath them? It's like they switch personalities in a matter of seconds, with the boss. They're all smiles and kindness. With the delivery guy, they can barely look up from their phones. Watts called this social schizophrenia. A person literally splits into multiple versions of themselves, depending on the perceived status of the person in front of them, But there's something even more revealing in this first sign. It's the micro-expression that flashes across their face when someone realizes you have nothing to offer them. That precise moment, when they discover you're of no use to their ambitions, the smile that vanishes from their lips, the light that fades from their eyes, subtle way their body pulls away. It's so fast that most people don't even consciously register it, but your subconscious, it registers everything. That's why sometimes you feel an unexplained aversion to someone who seems perfectly pleasant. The fascinating paradox is that people who only treat well those who can be useful to them end up creating a void around themselves. They build relationships based on transaction and not on connection. And deep down, they know it. They know that if they lose what they have to offer, they'll lose everyone around them too. It's a gilded cage of their own making. Watts used to tell the story of a billionaire CEO, he met in Paris. This man was adored by everyone, charismatic, generous with gifts, always knew the right things to say. But Watts noticed something odd, When the building superintendent tried to greet him, the CEO literally didn't see him. It wasn't intentional rudeness. It was worse. The superintendent simply didn't exist in his field of a non-being, This same CEO lost everything in a financial scandal. Discovered, in the most painful way imaginable, that all those people who adored him were actually adoring his bank account, not him. When he no longer had anything to offer, he became as invisible as the superintendent had always been to him. The universe has this sense of cosmic humor, sometimes brutal. The second thing that reveals true character, and this one is even more subtle, is how a person reacts. Someone they consider inferior, succeeds, It's not about run-of-the-mill envy. We all feel that pang. When a friend achieves something we desire, that's human. Watts was talking about something much deeper and more disturbing. It's that visceral unease, when the waiter you barely noticed opens their own restaurant, when the administrative assistant you treated like part of the furniture gets promoted above you, when that relative that everyone considered the black sheep of the family suddenly thrives. Watch their reactions closely, not the polite words of congratulations, but what happens on their face. In the first 2 seconds after the news is announced, there's an almost imperceptible tightening of the muscles around the eyes, a momentary clenching of the jaw, a sudden stiffness in the shoulders. The body literally rejects the information. It can't process that the mental hierarchy has been violated. It's like an error in the ego's operating system. Watts explained that this happens because we build our identity, not only on what we are, but also on what we are not, Successful because he failed. I am intelligent, because she is limited. I am special, because they are common. When someone we've placed in the inferior category surpasses our identity structure wobbles. It's terrifying. The most ironic thing is that people who genuinely rejoice in the success of others, especially those considered beneath them, are the ones who end up creating what Watts called magnetic fields of abundance around themselves. When you sincerely encourage the waiter who opens their restaurant, when you celebrate the administrative assistant's promotion, when you're inspired by the success of the underachieving relative. Powerful message to the universe, your own subconscious. You're saying that success isn't a zero-sum game, that there's enough abundance for everyone, ... But here's Watts's deepest insight regarding these two signs. They don't reveal whether someone is good or bad. That's a childish simplification. They reveal the level of inner security of the person. The more insecure someone is about their own worth, or they need to put others down to feel elevated ... the more fragile their self-image, the more threatening the rise of the inferior becomes. That's why ... paradoxically ... the truly powerful people are often the gentlest with those who have nothing to offer. They don't need the contrast to feel valued. Their source of worth is internal and not comparative. Watts cited the example of the ancient Roman emperors, who spent hours conversing with beggars and madmen ... not out of charity, but because they recognize that wisdom doesn't care about. There's a fascinating test you can do on yourself. The next time you meet someone you absolutely don't need anything from, observe your first inner reaction, not the polite action that your social upbringing produces, but that first fraction of a second of authentic response. See them as a whole person, or just as an extra in your Owen movie? The honest answer can be disturbing. Someone you've subconsciously classified as beneath you achieves a great victory. Observe what your body does before your educated mind takes over. Is there genuine celebration or a subtle contraction? Don't judge yourself for the answer, simply observe. Because awareness is the first step toward transformation. Alan Watts used to say that the universe is constantly testing us through these situations. Every interaction with someone without power is an invitation to reveal our true nature. Every success of a perceived inferior is an opportunity to either expand or contract. And the beautiful thing is, we're not prisoners of our patterns. We can choose in every moment who we want to be. But there's an even deeper layer in these two signals that most people never perceive. We mistreat someone you don't need anything from. You're secretly preparing yourself for your own future. Because all of us, at some point, will be the person that nitrogen monoxide one needs. Aging guarantees it. Retirement, illness, the simple passage of time, which renders our skills obsolete. How you treat the invisible today is how you will be treated when you become invisible tomorrow. This isn't some mystical karma. It's simply that you're training your own mind to see value only in what's useful. One day, inevitably, you'll no longer be useful. You have to live with the worldview you've cultivated in the same way. When you resent the success of those you deem inferior, you're building a mental prison where your worth depends on the failure of others. Imagine living in a reality where you can only feel good if others are doing poorly. What a self-imposed hell. What a waste of vital energy. Alan Watts told the story of a Zen monk he met in Japan. This monk had a particular practice. Every day, he chose the most insignificant person he encountered and treated them as if they were the Buddha in disguise. The homeless guy on the corner, the elderly woman selling flowers in Union Square, stumbling drunk on Skid Row. He sincerely believed that everyone could be an enlightened master, testing his perception. The result? This monk lived in a reality where he was constantly surrounded by secret masters. Every interaction was sacred. Every person was a mystery to revere. Compare that to someone who only sees value in those who can be useful, who lives in paradise, and who lives in hell. Now let me share something that's going to change the way you observe people forever. Alan Watts discovered that there's an exact moment, a psychological inflection point, where these two signals manifest with the most clarity. It's during transitions of power, when someone is about to get a promotion, when they lose their status, when money dwindles or arrives in droves. In these moments of change, the ego panics. Social facades become more difficult to maintain. It's like trying to hold water in your hands. The harder you squeeze, the more it escapes. And that's exactly when the person reveals, intentionally, how they really see the world and their place in it. Alan Watts witnessed this dramatically during the Great Depression. Wealthy families who lost everything discovered who their true friends were. But more interestingly, they discovered who they themselves were. Some, by losing the power to buy loyalty, discovered the beauty of authentic connection. Others, unable to exist without purchased adoration, simply collapsed. He knew a socialite from Beverly Hills who lost her entire fortune. At first, she fell into despair, seeing her glamorous friends disappear. Then, something extraordinary happened. Her housekeeper, whom she'd barely noticed for years, continued to visit her, now as a friend. The gardener, whom she treated as part of the landscape, brought her food when she was hungry. The chauffeur, who had been invisible, offered her shelter when she lost her home. These people, whom she had treated with polite indifference for decades, turned out to be the only genuine human. And for the first time, she learned what true love was. Not admiration, not flattery, not transaction, but that simple and profound care that arises when you see the other as an equal. Alan Watts used to say that this is the hidden gift in the loss of status. You discover that all the respect you were receiving wasn't for you, but for your position. It's devastating and liberating at the same time. Devastating because the ego dies, liberating because the first time you can just be human, without performance, without a mask, without the exhausting maintenance of the image. But let's delve even deeper into the second signal, because there's a nuance that few perceive. When someone inferior succeeds, and you feel that contraction, pay attention to what your mind does immediately after. It starts looking for explanations that restore the hierarchy. They got lucky. She must have slept with someone. They had help. It's nepotism. It's temporary. This mental gymnastics. Ego desperately trying to keep its worldview intact. Because accepting that the waiter waitress is just as capable as you, the building superintendent is just as intelligent as you, the homeless person might have wisdom you don't, requires a complete reformulation of who you think you are. Alan Watts called this the democratization of the divine, the radical idea that the spark of consciousness, what we really are, is identical in everyone. The CEO and the building superintendent ... are different waves, same ocean, temporarily taking distinct forms, but essentially the same water ... when you truly understand this, not intellectually ... but viscerally. Those two signals simply evaporate. You can no longer treat someone as inferior because you see your OWN essence reflected in them. Understand that it's the same ocean celebrating through a different wave. But here's the paradox that Alan Watts loved to point out. The moment you think you've overcome these signals, the moment you consider yourself too evolved to fall into these traps, that's exactly when you're most vulnerable, because now ... you've created a new hierarchy, the evolved and the unevolved, conscious and the unconscious, the awakened and the asleep. He used to tell the story of a very famous Indian guru who visited Paris in the 70s. This guru preached about universal equality and unconditional love. But Watts noticed that he treated his Western disciples with an exaggerated patience, as if they were special children needing extra care. And he treated the Indian servants of the ashram datta with the casual indifference of someone accustomed to castes. The guru had transcended material hierarchy, only to create a spiritual hierarchy. And this one is even more pernicious because it comes disguised as enlightenment ... It's the ego ... wearing saint's clothing. There's an even more subtle test that Alan Watts suggested. Observe how you feel. When someone you've helped becomes more prosperous than you, that homeless person you used to give spare change to, who became an entrepreneur, that student you mentored ... who now earns 10 times your salary, that friend who was down in the dumps that you consoled, who now has a more fulfilling life than you ... There's the slightest trace of resentment, slightest feeling that they should be eternally grateful, the slightest expectation that they should remain below you in the hierarchy. Because of your past generosity ... then you weren't really helping ... You were investing in superiority ... True generosity, Butts insisted ... Doesn't create debts, doesn't establish hierarchies ... Doesn't expect a return, even in the form of gratitude. It's like the sun ... which shines equally on saints and on assassins, not because they deserve it, but because that's the nature of the sun ... But let's talk about something practical. How can you use these two signals, not just to read others, but to transform yourself? Alan Watts suggested a radical exercise. For 1 week, treat the most insignificant person you meet each day as if they were the most important, not in an exaggerated or fake way, but with authentic curiosity ... and presence ... Talk with the cashier at the grocery store about something other than the transaction. Ask the janitor how their day is going. Sit down with the homeless person on the street corner and listen to their story, not out of charity ... but out of exploration. Each person were a unique universe that you have the privilege to contemplate. What happens is fascinating ... Firstly, ... you'll discover that your assumption about who is interesting and who ISN single quotes T ... was completely wrong. The janitor might have been a classical pianist in Bucharest. The cashier might be funding their medical studies. By writing poetry at night ... the homeless person might have an understanding of human nature that no psychologist possesses ... Secondly ... and more importantly, you begin to dissolve the tyranny of hierarchy in your own mind. You begin to see that interesting and uninteresting, important and unimportant, superior and inferior are just categories that your mind creates to simplify the infinite complexity of reality. Alan Watts recounted an experiment that he did in Paris ... for a month. He decided to treat every person as a Buddha in disguise ... testing his perception. The result was surprising. Not only did his interactions become richer and more meaningful, but he began to notice that people responded to him differently, as if they sensed ... unconsciously that they were truly seen. A homeless man he spoke with regularly one day ... said something that left him speechless. The man said that most people who gave handouts weren't giving money. They were buying distance ... They were paying not to have to see him as a human. But when someone really saw him, when someone spoke to him as an EQUAL, that was worth more than ANY amount of money. This is the deepest secret that the two signals reveal. It's not just about how we treat others, it's about how we fragment our own consciousness. Every time we see someone as inferior, we deny a part of ourselves ... Every time we feel offended by the success of a lesser, we reject our own unlimited potential. Alan Watts explained this through a brilliant metaphor ... Imagine you're an actor who's forgotten that they're acting. You completely believe that you are the character ... Imagine that other actors on stage ... have LSO forgotten, some are playing roles of others of beggars ... They're ALL actors, all equally divine in their essence ... The two signals are symptoms of the depth to which we've forgotten that we're acting, of the completeness with which we identify with our temporary roles. The CEO who scorns the janitor is an actor who's forgotten that tomorrow ... the roles might be reversed. Janitor who feels resentful about the CEO's success. An actor who's forgotten that they could play any role. Liberation comes ... when we remember, not intellectually ... but experientially. When we look into the eyes of another human being, and we see ... not their social function, not their economic status, not their usefulness to our ambitions, but that same consciousness that's looking out through our own eyes. Alan Watts experienced something that illustrates this perfectly during a trip to Japan. He got lost in a rural area, speaking no Japanese ... having no local currency, completely disoriented. An elderly farmer, who was clearly living in poverty ... found him, without a common language, without any way to communicate verbally. Simply took him to his home, fed him, and took him back to town the next day. There was no possibility of retribution. The farmer would never know who Alan Watts was, would never receive anything in return. It was a pure expression of human nature, and it's not tainted by calculations of hierarchy and utility ... It was, in the words of Alan Watts, finding God disguised as a poor Japanese farmer. But there's something even more radical that Alan Watts discovered about these two signals. They don't just reveal character, they create reality. The way you see and treat others literally shapes the world you live in. If you treat people as a means to an end, you create a transactional world ... where you too ... are just a means. You resent the success of those you deem beneath you. You create a world of scarcity, where your gain is always someone else's loss. It's a prison you build and inhabit simultaneously. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. A vicious cycle, on the other hand. When you treat the invisible with genuine presence, when you celebrate the unexpected success of the underdogs, you create cracks in the social matrix. You open spaces where miracles can happen, where the waiter-waitress can become a head chef, where the building superintendent can become a CEO, where the homeless person can be your most important teacher. It's like in those classic underdog stories from Rocky to The Pursuit of Happiness. Alan Watts said that the universe responds to our perception, not mystically, but practically. When you see unlimited potential in everyone ... you invite that potential to manifest. When you see only utility and hierarchy, you reinforce those limitations. He met an entrepreneur who took this seriously. He started treating every employee, from the CEO to the janitor, as equally essential, not as a corporate slogan, but as an authentic practice. Meetings included everyone. Ideas were heard regardless of their source. Profits were shared proportionally. This is similar to the philosophy espoused by figures like Richard Branson, who believes in empowering employees. The result? In 5 years, 3 janitors became managers, 2 receptionists became executives. A night security guard developed a logistics system that saved millions. Not because they were secretly geniuses, waiting to be discovered, but because, when you treat people as capable, they become capable. That's the most transformative aspect of these 2 signals. They're not just diagnostic, they're prescriptive. Changing how you see and treat the invisible changes who you are. Genuinely celebrating the success of the underdogs expands your own possibility. If this paradox about perception and reality has sparked something in you, super thanks is a way to support more content. Alan Grannis. Alan Watts said that when an idea resonates deeply, it's the universe recognizing itself through you. Alan Watts left a final insight about these 2 signals. That few know. He said that there will come a time in every person's life when they will be tested definitively, when they lose everything that makes them special in the eyes of society. Youth. Beauty. Body. Power. Health. And at that moment, they will discover if they spent their life building real connections or only accumulating admirers. Think of the classic Christmas movie trope of the rich Scrooge realizing his relationships are more valuable than his wealth. Those who treated the invisible with dignity will discover they were never alone. Those who secretly rejoice in the failure of others. Will discover that the universe. It's a poetic justice. Unrelenting. It's a universal karma. So I ask you the question, and be brutally honest with yourself. How did you react the last time a nobody crossed your path? And more importantly, how will you react the NEXT time? Because now, now. Okay, you see the signs. And with awareness, comes choice. With choice. With responsibility comes the possibility of true transformation. These 2 telltale signs of our true nature aren't just about reading others. They're also about writing your own story. It's about deciding, in every moment, who you choose to be. It's about remembering that every encounter is an opportunity, either to confirm or to transcend, the illusory hierarchies, that imprison us, as Alan Watts so eloquently put it. The cosmic game isn't about social climbing, it's about realizing that the ladder is purely imaginary. And when you realize that, when you truly see through the illusion, these 2 signals disappear, not because you've become a saint, but because you've remembered who you've always been. Pure consciousness, temporarily. Pretending to be separate, playing at being superior or inferior, important or insignificant, until everything is one. And always has been, as Alan Watts would say. Like the concept of namaste, acknowledging the divine spark in everyone. But Alan Watts discovered about why these 2 signals are so difficult to change, even when we're aware of them. It's because they're intimately linked. To our biological survival. Our reptilian brain is programmed for hierarchy, to identify who is a threat and who is a resource, who is above and who is below. Pecking order. But Alan Watts argued that this programming, which was useful when we lived in tribes of 50 people, has become our prison. In societies of millions. We continue to operate with tribal software on globalized hardware, treating every interaction as a status negotiation. Every encounter as an opportunity to climb. Risk of falling. He observed this in a fascinating way. At academic conferences, brilliant professors, supposedly dedicated to the pursuit of truth, still jockeying for a position in like the saying, academic politics are so vicious because the stakes are so small. They're still operating from this place of spent more energy calculating intellectual hierarchies than who quoted whom, who was published where, who had the most prestige. Knowledge became secondary. Compared to status. Alan Watts used to tell a story about a conversation he had with Jean-Paul Sartre back in the 50s. Sartre confided in him that his greatest sadness wasn't the Algerian War, but seeing how even the brightest intellectuals worried more about recognition than discovery, how the ego contaminated even the pursuit of objective truth. But there is a way out, and Alan Watts found it, not in philosophy, but in observing young children. Before the age of 3, before complete socialization, children don't see hierarchy. A baby smiles the same way at a CEO as at a homeless person. A 2-year-old plays with as much enthusiasm with the son of a millionaire as with the son of the building superintendent. What happens next? We teach them through thousands of microsignals. We show them Who is important and who isn't, who deserves attention and who should be ignored, who is in our league and who isn't. So perceptual innocence dies, replaced by social schizophrenia. Alan Watts conducted a fascinating experiment with his Owen's son. He decided to never indicate social hierarchy. He treated everyone they met with equal interest and respect. Of the result, his son developed an extraordinary ability to connect with anyone. By 16, he was just as comfortable conversing with corporate executives as with the homeless. But the most interesting thing was what happened next. This son, raised without awareness of hierarchy, extremely successful. Not because he manipulated the social system, but because he genuinely saw unique value in every person. This authenticity was so rare, it became his superpower. Alan Watts theorized that these two signals are actually symptoms of a deep fear. Fear of not being good enough, fear of being exposed as a fraud, fear of losing, and this fear drives us to create imaginary hierarchies where at least we're superior to someone. He met a Tibetan monk who had a radical perspective on this. The monk said that in the West, people suffer from a poverty of being. No matter what they possess, they feel empty. So they try to fill the void by being superior to others. But it's like trying to quench your thirst by drinking salt water. The more they drink, the thirstier they become. The practice this monk suggested was radical. Every morning upon waking, before any thought about the day, repeat, "I am enough, exactly as I am, neither better than anyone nor worse than anyone, simply eno yuja," and then observe how it changes your interactions throughout the day. Alan Watts tested this for a year. The result was a profound transformation, not only in how he, but in how he saw himself. The compulsive need to impress vanished. The anxiety about status evaporated. He discovered a peace that didn't depend on social position. But let's talk about something nobody discusses. These two signals also appear in intimate relationships. How do you treat your partner when they can do nothing for you? When they're sick, depressed, unemployed, when they've lost what initially attracted you, that's when real love reveals itself, where the transaction is exposed. And how do you react when your partner surpasses you in something? When they earn more, when they receive more attention, when they develop talents that you don't have. The subtle contraction or the genuine celebration reveals if it's love or disguised possession. Alan Watts observed marriages for decades and noticed a disturbing pattern. Many couples aren't two people who love each other. They're two egos negotiating superiority, each secretly keeping score, each needing to be superior. In something, when the balance of power shifts, the marriage lapses. He had an extraordinary couple in Big Sur, both artists, both successful, but what made them unique was how they genuinely celebrated each other's success. When she sold a painting, he was happier than she was. Published a book, she vibrated as if it were her own. There was no competition because there were no separate egos competing. This couple had a practice. Every day they deliberately looked for something to admire in each other. Not empty compliments, but genuine appreciation, and they included other people in this practice. The mail carrier, the neighbor, the bank teller. They created a field of mutual appreciation. Alan Watts used to say that it's the opposite of the two negative signals. Instead of looking for who is inferior and resenting those who rise, you actively seek what's admirable in everyone, and you celebrate every success as your own. It's a complete inversion of social programming. But there's a level, even deeper, that we need to explore. These two signals aren't just individual, they're systemic. Entire societies are built on these foundations. Capitalism depends on hierarchy and competition. Religions create spiritual castes. Education classifies and labels. We swim in an ocean of hierarchy, an infinite ocean. Alan Watts argued that this was the fundamental sickness of our civilization. We create systems that require losers to have winners, that need poor people to have rich people, that depend on the ignorant for some to be considered knowledgeable. A game where the majority must lose for a few to triumph. Kind of social Russian roulette. He proposed a thought experiment. Imagine a society where the success of one individual automatically benefits everyone, where the more someone gains, the more everyone gains, where there's no ladder to climb, ... because everyone exists on the same horizontal plane, ... utopia? or simply. Interestingly, Alan Watts found examples of this in indigenous tribes where the most skilled hunter gains prestige by giving more and not by accumulating. Where the wise person is respected, not because they are superior but because they serve. Where individual success without collective benefit is seen as a mental illness. An aberration. He spent time with the Hopi in Arizona and was profoundly impacted. They literally had no word for superior or inferior when referring to people. They had different functions, different skills, but the idea of a human hierarchy was incomprehensible to them. Absolutely incomprehensible. An elder Hopi once said something that Alan Watts never forgot. Among white people, everyone tries to be the tallest mountain. Double quotes, but isolated mountains are just lonely rocks. We prefer to be the plain, where everything grows together, where life flourishes. Double quotes. This vision completely changed how Watts understood those two signs. They are not individual character flaws, they are the symptoms of a sick cosmology. Worldview where separation is more real than connection, where competition is more natural than cooperation. A true pandemic of the mind. But here's the most important revelation. You can't change these two signs by fighting against them. It's like trying not to think of a pink elephant. The more you try not to judge hierarchically, the more the judgments arise. The more you try not to resent the success of others. The resentment appears. The battle that's lost before it even begins. Transformation comes from somewhere else. It comes from experiences of unity, from moments when the illusion of separation dissolves. This can happen through meditation. Through the use of psychedelics. Through near-death experiences, through deep love, through nature. Through art. There are many portals. Many pathways. Alan Watts had his experience of unity at the age of 17. While looking at the night sky. For an eternal moment, he wasn't looking at the stars. He was the stars, looking at themselves. The separation between the observer and the observed dissolved. And at that moment, hierarchy became absurd. How could one star be superior to another? How could one part of the universe be more important than another? Simply inconceivable. After that experience, those two signs were never the same for him. He still noticed them in himself. The conditioning ran deep, but there was now a deeper voice that chuckled kindly at the absurdity. Like an adult observing a child arguing over who's the king of an imaginary playground. A game. A simple game. That's the key. Not about eliminating those two signs, about seeing them for what they are. Games the ego plays to maintain the illusion of separation. When you see the game as a game, you can choose whether to play or not. But your nitrogen monoxide longer trapped inside. You are free. Alan Watts suggested a final practice. At the end of each day, review your interactions. Without judgment. Simply observe. How many times did you rank someone as superior or inferior? How many times did you feel a contraction or expansion based on hierarchy? Not to guilt yourself, but to marvel at the depth of the conditioning. Almost like a brainwashing. And then, imagine for a moment that every person you met today was literally you and the arrogant boss. You, with fear. The homeless person on the corner. You. Without opportunity. The genius. You. With different talents. The knucklehead. You. On a bad day. How does that change the story of your day? Watts said that this isn't just a poetic metaphor. From the point of view of consciousness. It's literally true. We are the universe experiencing itself subjectively. Each person is a unique aperture through which the cosmos observes itself. A miracle. When you truly incorporate this, those two signs become impossible. How can you look down on the invisible when it's you and another? How can you resent the success of another when it's you celebrating through another body? Impossible. But Alan Watts was realistic. He knew that most of us don't live in this state of unity constantly. We fall back into the illusion of separation thousands of times a day. And that's normal. The cosmic game includes forgetting and remembering. Separation and union. Hierarchy and equality. It's an eternal dance. The important thing is to have moments of clarity, moments where you see through the game. And in those moments, make conscious choices. Treat the invisible with presence. Not because you are holy, but because you remembered. Even briefly, that there are no invisibles. Celebrate unexpected success, not because you were evolved, but because you saw, even for a second, that it's you celebrating yourself. If you never have another experience of unity, Let this be your cone. How would you treat each person if you knew with absolute certainty that in 100 years you will both be dead? That in 1,000 years no one will remember either of you? That in 1 billion years the sun will have consumed the earth? That in trillions of years the universe will have returned to void? Ponder that deeply. Faced with absolute impermanence, hierarchy reveals its true nature, an elaborate distraction from the only fact that matters. We are here now together briefly. Miraculously conscious in a mostly unconscious cosmos each of us a statistical impossibility each encounter. An irreplaceable cosmic convergence. Those two signs that reveal true character are, in the end, invitations. Invitations to step out of the trance of hierarchy to remember who we really are. To play the cosmic game consciously, with lightness with humor, with compassion. As Alan Watts said in his last recorded words, in the end, we discover that being nobody special is the greatest. Freedom that treating everyone as equally sacred is the greatest wisdom that celebrating every expression of life is the greatest joy. These two signs vanish. Realize that there has always been only one of us here, pretending to be many, playing the eternal game of hide-and-seek with itself. An infinite game think about it. It's like a cosmic joke Or maybe a divine comedy. We're all characters in this grand play, with our own unique role, our own story to tell but deep down we are all the same. We are all part of the same one consciousness, experiencing itself from different perspectives. It's a concept that has been explored by mystics philosophers and artists throughout history, from the ancient Hindu concept of Atman to the modern-day teachings of spiritual teachers like Eckhart Tolle. The idea that we are all interconnected that we are all one keeps resurfacing. And when we truly understand this, when we truly feel it in our bones it changes everything. Suddenly the world looks different. Our relationships become more meaningful. Our actions become more compassionate We start to see the sacredness in everything in everyone even in those who seem to be the most different from us It's a journey of awakening a journey of remembering who we really are, and it's a journey that is available to all of us right here right now. Just stop for a moment, take a deep breath, and feel the connection. The unity the oneness Can you feel it?